Hi, welcome to episode 46 of the American Tributaries podcast, where to break out of the bubbles we're all living in, we're using modern technology to explore the various currents of people in our great country. Kind of like a 21st century Lewis and Clark journey. I'm your host, Michael Whidden, here in Brooklyn, New York, and thank you for joining me in this exploration of America. Before we start talking with today's guest, I wanted to address one point. Some of the feedback I've heard from some people has been about the podcast being maybe could be a little shorter, or maybe it's not succinct enough. And I wanted to, respond with like 3 points. One, to be totally honest, I do not have the skill set to do much editing. But the second thing is that once you start editing, you start imposing your own viewpoint on things and infusing what gets out there with a bit of bias. And I didn't want to do that. I want these to be kind of open, honest conversations, messy, confusing, nuanced, and I didn't want to impose my viewpoint by editing. But the third thing is that, the podcast is about building bridges, and we build bridges with new people by having conversations. And those conversations can often meander a little bit, and those conversations can kind of drift into different topics. And then sometimes we settle on a topic that is, pretty obvious, but we might settle into different topics that are unexpected. So, the conversations themselves are a journey, and I appreciate every listener and viewer that joins me in these. So thank you for that. All right. Well, with that, I'd like to introduce the next guest. I'm thrilled to be joined by Sergeant Major Rickey Jackson. Originally from Philadelphia, Sergeant Major Jackson now lives in the Columbia, South Carolina area, where he is the 32nd Commandant of the Drill Sergeant Academy at the Army's Fort Jackson. Sergeant Major Jackson, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you doing? And could you share a bit of your story?
Yeah, good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk to you and others out there listening. I'm having a great day. As always, I'm very engaged. There's always some very dynamic challenges out there throughout our formation that, me and my team are getting after. And I will tell you, training America's drill sergeants is serious business. And here at the Drill Sergeant Academy, we take it very serious to ensure we get it right so that that new soldier that comes into the formation has the best experience possible.
Is the drill that to me the first exposure that I had, and the most lingering exposure I had to drill sergeants, was like what you would see like in Full Metal Jacket. How much of that is what is happening, and to the extent it does, can you explain, the rationale for that kind of experience? Because I used to serve, as I explained to you before, so I kind of understand it, but it's useful for anybody else listening to understand what happens when you go from civilian to military member.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look back around 1970 or so, our Army had to, volunteer. It was a volunteer Army, and we had to draft as well. So when you draft folks, you're pulling some folks out, from the homes, and then in some cases we were enlisting folks that may have just come out of jail. There was some dynamics there. So as folks showed up off those buses, the drill sergeants back in 1970, they had to, instill their will over the people by what we consider as the shark attack. And that shark attack was when, as soon as they got off the bus, you just had a bunch of drill sergeants just, overwhelming those folks coming off those buses, because you had all types of different behaviors coming off the buses. So the shark attack immediately, made people have to adjust themselves to military lifestyle. And if you look at now in 2023, and I tell the drill sergeants this, I say, most of you in here have college education. Most of you in here are very technically, savvy, where you are much more innovative and creative thinkers today. And our society is just different from 1970 in many ways. So we no longer need to have the shock and awe to the population of 1970 for the 2023 folks. We need to be able to coach, teach, and mentor our young folks that are coming into the formation. We must have a connection. We must build a connection with these folks, which means eyeball to eyeball, conversation to conversation. We must build trust and the population, that our drill sergeants are going to take care of you. So we have changed the culture and how we approach trainings. Now, that doesn't mean softer. Standards and discipline have not changed. Rules, regulations have not changed. But has society changed a bit? Absolutely. So we must adapt to what I like to say, our operating environment. So I need you to be more innovative, and I need you to have a little bit more creative thinking on how you get after the problem. And that's what our drill sergeants are doing today, which then, by all means, it makes that trainee feel a little bit more, I would say, at ease, because you're building team day one. And it gets away from what we would call breaking the soldier in a way. You immediately build team. So it's different, but very effective.
Yeah. One of the things I've thought about is that, like, in the media, you'll get this sense of like these, I don't know, the overwhelming armies that like they might have in China or they could have in, Russia, whatever it is. But to me, some of those armies are armies in countries which are essentially are dictatorships, and I think that the benefit of being in a country that is a democracy, that's not a dictatorship, is that there is some room for flexibility, and I think that to me is like, if somebody only listens to orders or somebody only responds to fear, you're only going to get them to do so far, and once that's gone, they're going to do whatever they can. Whereas if you have them motivated from something internal, they're actually still dedicated to the mission, and they're going to have some ability to adapt to a situation. Because one of the things that I was always very uncomfortable with the Navy was that you have these plans, or you have these exercises, and they're supposed to go this way, and it took me forever to really appreciate the fact that those plans are almost always from the beginning theoretical, and once they meet reality, they change, and you've got to adapt. So I think that seems to me that one of the challenges that you must have is kind of teaching them to follow orders, but empowering them to also be able to adapt.
Yes, absolutely. And many other armies, they don't have a non-commissioned officer corps like we do in the United States Army. And our non-commissioned officer corps is the most powerful corps in the world, because, officers, they empower the non-commissioned officers to get after their intent, their mission. And non-commissioned officers are the ones out there on the ground that are training the soldiers, that are caring for the soldiers. So very important job for our NCOs. And you look at some of the other armies that are very officer-centric, and you look at some of the things that are going on in the world right now, and where you see some failure and some superpower armies, is that they don't have that non-commissioned officer corps. So the first sign of failure or defeat, that army doesn't know what to do, because there's no one else on the ground that can make a decision other than the commander. And in our army, we teach from day one, when a soldier comes in from a civilian to a soldier, how to make decisions, how to assess, how to determine risk. You're absolutely building this individual to be able to make decisions on the battlefield. That's what makes us the most powerful army in the world.
Yeah. So how long have you been in the service now?
I've been in the Army now 27 and a half years. But the goal, hopefully, is to get to 30 and retire.
Well, you've made it a good portion of the way. You have 10% left.
Yes, sir.
So what what were you doing before the Army, and what led you to go into the Army?
Interesting. So I tell people this story, right? I grew up inner city, North Philadelphia. Very young parents, started early, so didn't have much. They struggled. My parents divorced very young age, so my mom was a single parent. So I had been working since the age of 12. And I'll tell you the quick story here. So at the age of 12, 13, I worked for the city, walking around picking up trash and in places in the city. I did that. It was a program for young kids, so I did that. And from 15 to about 16, I worked in the Boys and Girls Club, helping young kids there, just as I was a young kid, running sports. And then from 17 to 18, I worked fast food. I think the restaurant was called Hardee's. So I have truly been open books working since the age of 12 as a young man. But 4 years in high school, I did ROTC. And I thought the discipline in the ROTC program in high school, I thought it was an awesome thing. I also played basketball in high school, so I didn't know if I was going to go to college to play ball or Army. Both of those were options. And when things didn't necessarily work out the way I wanted it to with the basketball, I elected to go into the Army for several years, thinking I was going to leave the Army in 3 years and then go to college. But here I am 27 and a half years later.
They pulled a fast one on you.
I actually enjoyed the camaraderie and truly the discipline. And I would tell you, coming in the Army, inner city kid, North Philadelphia, I'll just be honest with you. I probably didn't have all my marbles straight, right? I didn't have. I was still just a young kid. I didn't have the discipline necessarily to understand certain things. But I will tell you, back in 1995, those leaders that were in that formation. Remember, those leaders that had 18, 19, 20 years in the Army, they saved me. They truly put their arms around me and gave me hard, tough love. This made me who I am today.
So, I guess coming from like the inner city, and I guess having the struggles that I'm sure you were just going through, and everything's everybody's got their own struggles, but knowing your struggles and like the mid '90s, like I was in Philly, from '89 to '93, and like that was kind of like in the wake of like Rodney King and stuff like this. Like, was there any sense of like not like feeling like resentful towards serving your country, or was it kind of like a slam dunk? Were there some kids who were like, why are you doing that? Or like, what was your feeling? Did you have mixed feelings, or was this just like, no, definitely I want to do this?
I didn't have mixed feelings. I always thought the military was a good thing. And I resonate with the Army slogan back then, be all you can be. In the Army, right? It was, man, you see that on the commercial.
I remember that commercial.
With the Rangers and rappelling from the helicopters and in the boats and the swamps. I thought that was awesome. I just thought that commercial was just awesome. But, kids in my high school and in my neighborhood, I didn't see many people supporting the Army. Nobody was walking around, no mentors. Nobody out there on the corners were like, hey, man, the Army's a good thing. Not at all. I think I truly fell in love with the Army concept. It was ROTC. So I do believe high school ROTC for young people is an amazing program because it does help bridge that gap for some people out there that may be looking for discipline or trying to understand what the military is. ROTC programs provide that.
Yeah. And I guess what led you to go into the junior Army? Obviously, that's optional. So it sounds like you were like gravitating towards some curiosity about this, or some kind of like maybe unspoken interest in having a little bit more structure. What led you into it?
Yes, and in school back then. Recruiters were in the high school, and you see them walking around in uniform. That also is another thing that makes you say, "Man, that guy or girl looks really good in uniform. I could be that, or I wonder what they do." And that truly sparked my interest to truly go to the recruiter and say, one, what are you doing here? I think is what I asked the recruiter. What are you doing here at the high school? And he explained recruitment and what the Army, can offer. And to be honest, I wasn't interested up front because I was playing ball too. I was an athlete. But as that year went on and as my 12th grade year, and, you got college on the horizon, you got the military. College is expensive. And I wasn't like
Yeah.
some big
Yeah.
time, All-American. And that was just, I just didn't know where that was going to go. And I said, the Army was, after talking with the recruiter, the Army became more and more, as I say, a better option for me. Because you walk right in and you have you have a job, you have a skill set. And it's kind of on my own terms in a way. I'll do 3 years, I could come home. I could make money, get college education, I could come home. So all that started to drive me towards the Army.
So what was your first day like at drill? Do you remember your first day of training? Were you like completely overwhelmed, questioning your choices, or was it a natural fit?
Yes. Yeah, I'll probably be ashamed by saying this, but I'm sure I teared up a couple of times that night, the first night we got the basic training. I remember and we were in cattle carts back then. You put you in cattle carts almost like the cows or horses. You're in this cattle cart. And you don't know what's going on. You see these little holes out out the windows. And you drive up, and I see all these drill sergeants lined up down this long pathway. And they're all standing there very sharp. And those doors opened up on that cattle cart. And those drill sergeants, I mean, they went to throwing around stuff and yelling and screaming. I remember drinking a bunch of water and a bunch of push-ups. It was pretty much chaos. I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was, I guess, controlled chaos in a way. That night I went to bed, I thought I was in the wrong place. I shouldn't have come to the Army. That's how I felt.
Mm-hmm. And then what got you through?
Well, my family, thinking of them. Also, I've never quit anything, and I wasn't going to let these circumstances put me in a position of quitting. But truly thinking of my family, thinking of, hey, I'm a young man now. I need to make my own way. I can't go back home. So every day got better, right? Every day got better because, you get more and more comfortable in the circumstances. So, yeah, I would just say family and not having a quitting attitude got me through.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are. I only did 1 week of midshipman training, and it was the August of '89. It was at the Philadelphia shipyard, and this was still cold. It was still the Cold War military because like the Berlin Wall hadn't even come down yet or anything, right?
Right.
But this is nothing like what you went through, and I remember how rattling that was. But I mean, to be fair, if you think about it, if you took 200 people and just had them go someplace new the first day of college, you're going to have people who are going to be homesick. But then you add to that all the structure, and then you add to that the purposeful, chaos. It's right. Going to rattle people, and then add to that all the physical challenge and everything else. I mean, it's really amazing. When you guys have like a class of, I guess recruits who come in, like what's the attrition rate? Can you share that?
So what we've seen lately, so for each platoon, I can fill 120 personnel, 120 people. On average, I'll see somewhere between 100 to 110, just based on what we call deletions, deferments out there in the Army for whatever reasons, medical, some other things that don't allow the soldier to get here. Once they get here, and I have them for 9 weeks, where we see attrition is, to be honest with you up front, is the height and weight screening. Some people don't meet the required height and weight screening, unfortunately, when they show up here. So I have to send them back home. The other one is there are some academic challenges, mostly when it comes to firing their weapon. Folks get here and they may not have had the trigger time over the last year or so. And they come here and we require them to shoot what we call backup iron sight. And the backup iron sight is without an optic on it. So you're truly shooting basic weapon. And that becomes a challenge for some of the candidates who have not exercised their weapon in that form in a while. Most soldiers here in units, they have optics on their weapon. They get very used to that. It's lasered in, makes it really easy. You take that optic off and you go to a basic weapon, it takes a little bit of skill. So that's where we see some of our attrition.
Okay. And then do you have any, like, do you ever have to do you have anybody who like melts down? So like for psychological reasons, it's just not going to work? Or can you usually kind of support people enough to get through?
Yes. And so I'll talk about some resources first, and I'll kind of bring it into the soldiers. So here at the Academy embedded, I have a behavioral health therapist. I also have a behavioral health in some form of fashion, like a manager. He's a non-commissioned officer, so he's paired with the doctor. I have a chaplain that is also here on staff, and we have some outside resources that are here called the family. MFLAC, so Military Family Life Consultant. They are also here on the ground, and they provide a service of counsel that is not recorded, it's not archived anywhere. They're just here to be another resource to talk. So those are some of the resources that are here. Now, what we see with some of the candidates that come here, because they're stressed based off of having to learn a bunch of information or from the rigor of the course, we provide them with those resources. I also will refer the soldier out to the hospital most of the time so that they can go see a doctor at the hospital. And I would tell you, if the doctor comes back and has diagnosed an individual who had a behavior issue that may not put them in the best position to perform well here, I will usually send the soldier home to get better and then be able to come back. That does not exclude them from ever coming back here. I try my best to take care of our soldiers so that we don't use behavior and mental health as a disqualifier. I want people to know that if you're having those challenges, I need you to, mindfully communicate that so I can get you the care you need, get you where you can get better, then you can get back to me.
That's interesting because it's almost like staying aligned with like you want them to be comfortable asking for help. Obviously, they have to be able to move on, but just like I'm sure once they're out in the field, sometimes you got to know when you need some help, whether it's like professional like help from a mentor or if it's mental health, because the circumstances that are the trying circumstances, I'm sure that they confront are only far more challenging once you can get out into the field compared to training. So can I ask, like, what's some of your other experiences that you've had before you were involved with the Drill Sergeant Academy? What other assignments have you had?
I'll give you a little bit of my bio, right? So joined the Army 1995. Yeah. My first duty assignment was Fort Hood, Texas. Spent time in Fort Hood, Texas. There's a lot going on there in early or mid-90s. A lot of what we call technical platforms, digital platforms were starting to be placed in our platforms, right? So learning the digital, I would say, space of fighting and combat. So I joined the Army during that time. And after, I think it was 2000, I rotated over to Korea. Had a year, I would say, what they call a hardship tour in Korea. I thought it was an awesome time there. All you did was train. So I became very proficient at my profession in Korea. Come home from Korea, I actually came back to Fort Hood again. And just to put the disclaimer out there, my wife is from Austin, Texas. So that's why I spent a little bit of time in Texas. Did another 4 years there. And then, of course, the 9/11 happened 2001, and I was in Iraq at the end of 2003 out of Fort Hood, Texas, into Baghdad, Iraq. I did that mission for about 15 months on ground in Baghdad and Fallujah. Came back from that deployment and became a drill sergeant, was DA select. So the Army looked at my records and saw fit that I needed some diversity. So I became a drill sergeant here at Fort Jackson. I did 2 years in basic training here at Fort Jackson and Delta 260th Infantry Regiment. I thought that was really the first time in my career where, I think I was in the Army. You still got me?
Yeah, still here.
Okay. I was in the Army at the time, maybe 7 years, and I transitioned to be a drill sergeant. So in some ways, I was very tunnel vision. All I knew was my profession. I'm a field artillery soldier. I'm really good at being a field artillery soldier. And then you become a drill sergeant. And then your team is made up of infantry, MPs, band members, 42 alphas with personal action folks. You are in an environment where there's so much diversity. There were women drill sergeants. The first time I've ever worked with a woman was when I became a drill sergeant. So I tell people my experience of coming to Fort Jackson to be a drill sergeant was the first time in 7 years that I had my blinders went here. I became very open to the Army and understanding truly what the enterprise of the Army was. And that was right here in basic training, Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And our female soldiers, let me tell you, they are rock stars. Let me tell you, I have a lot of respect for our female leaders out here. Their physical fitness, their decision making, phenomenal leaders. So that I learned all that right here at Fort Jackson. So did 2 years, was promoted to Sergeant First Class. Then I had my follow-on assignment in Germany. Was in Schweinfurt, Germany for 5 years. Deployed twice out of Schweinfurt, Germany. I went to Iraq again, and then, of course, to Afghanistan out of Europe. So busy times in Europe. That my first sergeant time as well when I was in Afghanistan. After completing that mission in Afghanistan around 2012, 2013, I was selected to go to HRC, Human Resource Command, at Fort Knox, Kentucky. And I did 2 years at Fort Knox. And what I did there as an assignment manager, so basically I managed the whole field artillery branch. So every soldier from the rank of private to master sergeant, my team manages all those eaches to go to assignments all over the world. That was a phenomenal job. And after that job, I was selected to go to Sergeant Major School at Fort Bliss, Texas. And that was a phenomenal time. Did 10 months there and immediately came out of school and was selected for command. And Fort Stewart, Georgia. Did command Fort Stewart, Georgia, battalion time. Did 30 months there, deployed to Korea again with that unit. Was selected right after battalion time. I made brigade. My brigade time was at Fort Riley, Kansas. I was the division artillery sergeant major there. Deployed that unit as well. I deployed to Latvia during this most recent incursion from Russia. Oh, wow. So I had a small piece in that deployment. And then, of course, during that deployment, I interviewed for this nominative level position here at the Drill Sergeant Academy and was selected by, my boss, Major General Klein. And I've now been in this position for 8 months. So as you unpack that, I've had a very busy career over 27 years, but wouldn't change anything about it because I am who I am today. And I feel like everything I'm doing today, I'm giving back to what was given to me. And I owe that to every one of these leaders in this this headquarters, and every new drill sergeant that walks in this academy, we owe them 110% of ourselves to make them better than us.
Yeah. What was it like when you deployed to Latvia? I mean, I think at that time it's really was the first time in a while where there's been kind of like, you know, a wartime situation in Europe, and I know that in the news there was a lot of anxiety. Like what was that like for you being deployed over there?
So I've been to Poland before. I've had that mission. I kind of missed that in the bio, but I've been to Poland. I did 6 months in Poland. So I was able to travel up and down the Baltics. But to truly be in Latvia for the 3 months that I was there, I tell you, it surprised me how welcoming the Latvians are. What I mean by that, by means, everybody loves Americans when it comes to military power, and, you know, and try to stay away from the politics here. But trust me, anywhere in the Baltics that an American soldier is, people are appreciative of that based on the current dynamics in Russia. So the Latvians are good people. It surprised me at how hard they train. They love their country by all means, and they want to protect their country. And you know, we know history of the past, and they want to remain as who they are. You know, and their people are very, very adamant about remaining Latvia. So I enjoyed my time there. That country is beautiful. I think that's what, the Black Sea there? No, or the Baltic Sea? Baltic Sea. And
Baltic Sea. Black Sea is down to the...
Yeah, Baltic Sea. So beautiful, beautiful country. If I could, I tell you, I would probably visit that place again with my wife, because it is the kind of place you want to go. And then, you know, right across north, you got Finland. You know, you got, and on top of Latvia, you have Estonia. Beautiful, beautiful places. And you know, I would offer to anybody that has not been to those places, you need to go. It's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, I went when I was a lawyer. I did a 3-week internship in Moscow, actually, and I went up to St. Petersburg, and that part of the world is lovely.
Oh yeah,
that was back in 2001. Yeah, and then I mean, for anybody listening, and if you're comfortable talking about, like, what is it like? Can I ask you, what's it like to be in combat? Like, I mean, people see lots of things in the movies, but like, what's the reality of when you're out there? I mean, before you do it for the first time, or like when you're involved? I mean, and how do you get out of that?
I'll use two separate engagements here. The first Iraq that I went to in 2003 is a lot of unknowns. I was a young sergeant back then. I had a team of about 6 or 7 soldiers that I was fully responsible for. I was absolutely scared. But what got me through was the training prior to. So I believe the training you get at home station prepares you for what you're going to go into. And watching my young soldiers every day go out and prepare a vehicle to go on patrol with ammunition, water, MREs, and making sure the radios were loaded and could talk, and having the map ready with the points of where we're going. Watching those young kids, privates, get out there every day and get and prepare things changed me as an individual. That if you provide the proper training and love and support for your people, they're going out and preparing things for you, knowing that there's some circumstances outside that gate every day. And when people do that for you, it'll change how you look at the world and how you look at people. You got to be good to people. You got to treat people good, man, because when people are putting their lives on the line for you. When people put their lives on, lives on the line for you, and you kind of sit back and you think about that, man, that'll make you view the world in a different lens. So that changed me. I no longer was scared about what was outside that gate, because I knew that the team I had, the young privates, that young sergeant that worked for me, they were prepared. They were ready. They made me feel prepared and ready. And I'm the old guy there. So it's all about your team. It's all about preparation. It's all about training. And it's all about taking care of each other. That got me through my first deployment, 15 months. The second point was when I was a first sergeant, a much older person. I'm in charge of an outpost out in East Paktika, Afghanistan, on the border. Pretty crazy times. And we would always get attacked, whether that's through, indirect fires, mortar, rocket, or small arms. So you're always on, as we say, on point. Your anxiety is there because you never know when the next one's coming. And we had this system that would alert you every time there was an indirect, weapon, round coming, projectile. And it would say, incoming, incoming, incoming. You would get tired of hearing that because you got to run to a bunker and run for cover. But that also is a mental thing that, you got to deal with every day. And how do you get through that in that situation? Because Afghanistan is totally different from Iraq. And how we got through that situation, because I had civilians and military with me on this very small outpost. You truly had to build team out there. And building team with a bunch of people that you may not have trained with in the rear. People come and go. So you got to build an environment that people feel very safe in, even though it's combat. That's a weird thing, right? How do you build a safe place knowing you're in harm's way? That's leadership. And leadership, you got to be able to build a connection with your people. And connection is eyeball to eyeball, right? You got to be able to look people in the eye and say, look, I got you. We're going to do this together. I got you. I'm going to take care of you. We're going to communicate. And I think when you can do that and you build a relationship with people, you can get through anything. I think our struggle sometimes is when you build zero communication with a person. You don't even talk to your people. You'll never win. So I believe communicating, building a connection, getting to know your people, which we call engaged leadership, that goes far beyond me just knowing your name, brother. If I know your mom, your dad, or your child, I know what drives you. I know what motivates you. I know what you're afraid of. When I'm engaged and I know my people, let me tell you, you'll win. You'll win every time. So that got me through the Afghanistan mission, was truly building a team and a team sticking together.
What does that mean when you say you were on an outpost? What does that mean exactly?
Okay, so for me, it took me from any local, let's say from Bagram. Bagram is the main air hub there. It's got some infrastructure there. So from Bagram, it probably takes me on a regular C-130, let's say an hour or so flight to get to one location. I can't say. But then from that location, it takes me about an hour, hour and a half helicopter ride way out on the border. That's hard to get to by any vehicles. Is where I was for 12 months.
Wow. And what was the purpose of that? Was that like connecting with the community or just kind of having a presence? What was the reason to have you so remote?
It's a combination of things, right? Because out there, your partner, what we call the Kandak, which is the Afghan army. So on my side at any given day, I would have, let's say, 100 green suiters, maybe, and 20 civilians that worked for me. On the other side of the wire was anywhere between 500 to 700 Afghani Kandak soldiers. So that was the dynamic of building a relationship with the Kandak, helping them train, not knowing if any of those folks are Taliban or not. Doesn't matter. My mission as the first one at the time was to partner with that leadership and help train that Kandak. And at the same time, the mayor and the folks that run the local city build relationships and partnerships with them as well. So a big task out there, as they say, alone and unafraid out there, right? And we call that working in decentralized operations. My higher headquarters is somewhere else. They have enough trust and confidence in myself and my commander at the time to run a whole installation, a whole outpost on our own, building relations with hundreds of Afghanis. So pretty big deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you're kind of wearing two hats of being like military, but also being ambassadors.
Absolutely. And every chance we had, we would, break bread, right? And Afghanis love to cook for you. If they truly love you and they open their doors, man, they'll cook for you all the time. And there was plenty of days around the table we were just sitting on the floor, Indian style, go cross legs. And just breaking bread. And like you say, building relationships. So you're right, we're ambassadors. That U.S. Army on your chest matters every day because it's very sensitive, because at the end of the day, as I'm out there acting on behalf of the Army, could very easily at any given moment have an international problem if I do something incorrect. And that's another thing, how we, as we say, as we build that trust into these new soldiers, this is instilled in us from day one, doing these things, being decentralized, giving folks the opportunity to lead at very young stages in their career. And this is what makes us such a good Army. But yeah, Afghanistan was a tough one, but I'll tell you, teamwork got us through that mission.
Yeah. And did you learn any of the local languages while you were there?
So I did, but I can't tell you I remember much of it. When I was there, I carried a handbook. I got really good at it too, right? Carried a handbook, and the basic words I knew. But if I wanted to carry on more of a conversation, I would pull out the handbook. And I would tell you, any country you go to and you make the effort, that's a level of respect from them that you're trying. Mm-hmm. So if you mm-hmm. walk in here and you're speaking English, or you're using hands or silent, like immediately no respect. But for Afghanis, you try to speak their language, that's a level of respect for them between you and them. Yeah. So yeah, I would.
And you eat
many
their food.
Times have a conversation.
Yeah. It's funny you mention these because, for me, like the other project I'm doing that's in parallel with this podcast is trying to, create travel and connections between like kids from the New York City area and South Carolina to start. And I've kind of settled on, to me, 4 core values, which is curiosity, respect, compassion, and humility. But one of the activities that I want to make sure that we're always doing is kind of is connecting over food, either by dining with people from South Carolina or at least kind of like learning and tasting the food. So, because I do think that's kind of a universal experience is breaking bread over the table with people.
It is. It's breaking bread. I mean, I think about how I came up, at that dinner table means a lot, right? A lot of things are discussed at that dinner table. And for the Afghanis, a lot of, like I say, a lot of bonding is done over a meal.
Yeah. And there's a lot, and I think to me is also when you're dining, you are showing respect by just eating the food, by asking questions about the food, and you're also giving your host an opportunity to talk about themselves and teach you about themselves without it being so obvious. So there's so much bonding that can happen there.
Yes.
So when we're in Colombia, the last time I was there, we went to Palmetto Pig.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, and I'm hoping to make that a regular visit.
Okay. Anytime you're here, you stop.
Do you have any other recommendations?
So,
do you have any other recommendations?
I've gotten around a little bit. So downtown, there's a place called Halls. It's a little, dressy there. You may have to put on a jacket or something. But Halls is a pretty nice restaurant. If you're a taco guy, and you just like fancy tacos, there's this place called Cantina downtown, which is also a very nice place to go. So 2 spots you should check out.
And then I saw some place called Pond River, which is a Caribbean bistro or something like that.
Yeah,
I was curious about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I figure while we're down there, like every place has their good food, and New York City's got like great food, and Philly's got its food. But what we found, and the surprise when the high schoolers that I took down there was like, man, like the stuff that South Carolina is good at, there is nobody better at. Like whether it's the fried chicken or the soul food or like Gullah Geechee, and like to me, what I wanted to do was kind of do a survey of as many different aspects of the cuisines available in South Carolina as I could.
Yeah, you come back, you hit me up.
I'll try to bring a cheesesteak down.
Yeah, please do.
Do you have a favorite cheesesteak place back in Philly?
Yes, I usually go to one up on Cheltenham Avenue off of Ogons Ave. It's a cheesesteak place there. I mean, they make the chicken cheesesteak, regular cheesesteak. They're the master of cheesesteaks there, and that's where I go because my father stays up off of Cheltenham Avenue. Really good place to go. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. I mean, my references are still to what 89 and 93 is when I was in Philly, and it was always either Pat's or Geno's, and I'm sure it's matured a lot since then. But yeah, I think I always gravitated towards Geno's, but I would not turn down a cheesesteak either way.
Popular places, right, where everybody go, which they're phenomenal. They're really good places, right? But you find some little hole in the wall places that are like fantastic,
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
So, from your experience, like, is there any kind of like misperceptions you think people have of the Army, like from the inside, like looking out?
I do, and I think that's kind of part of why I've tried to help change the culture of our Army. And I tell the drill sergeants during one of my briefs, I say, it's believed that outside of our Army, that people think if you join our Army, you're going to be sexually assaulted, sexually harassed, commit suicide, or have PTSD. That's the rhetoric that's out there. That's what people talk about. And we have to change that dynamic. We have to message, one, through model behavior by being good people. And we got to be ambassadors and advocates for our Army, which means we got to get from inside the gates and get outside the gates. Because I also think when 9/11 happened, we shut down all the bases. It's hard to get on. You got to get the ID cards. So we kind of separated ourselves from the American public. And we have to get back out in the streets in a way. We got to get back out amongst the general population and make them comfortable about what we're doing. And, it's real easy to read a headline that says ex-soldier abuses ex-soldier, or ex-soldier commits suicide. that's all you going to see or hear as negative, then that's the picture that's painted. But I think that also takes away from the 99% of people that are in the military that are doing the good Lord's work, that are truly trying to take care of people, train people, and protect, what we value, which is freedom. There's a lot of people that are getting after that every day, and I want to message that more, that there's 99% of the people that are doing exactly what you're asking us to do, American public, which is be the best army, best military in the world. And we are. And I do understand that there's things that in every organization that isn't done well, or there's mistakes. We're human beings too, right? But I'm going to tell you, when it comes to sexual assault, sexual harassment, I'm telling you, senior leaders, we are cracking down on that. The goal is 0 cases, period, right? But I also understand there's people that are always working against the plan, right? And we'll deal with those people accordingly. But I'm telling you right now, I want people to know, if your son or daughter comes in our army, we are absolutely doing the best possible to protect your child, to train them, to provide them a safe place to thrive in. And I'm telling you, the folks that are out there that are doing bad things, I'm looking for them too. I'm seeking them out because they only take away from the goodness of what we're doing. So I just want moms and dads out there to know that, your sons and daughters are going to be okay. By all means, my drill sergeants are here doing good work. I'm teaching culture change, getting away from all that yelling and screaming. I'm getting into, hey, I need you to take care of people. And that's where our army is moving to.
Yeah. Well, and the other part of it is like when you talk about like, just like anyone take a problem, sexual harassment, like it's out there in the civilian world. Like there's plenty of like lawyers from my prior career who will talk about like sexual harassment from male partners to junior women associates, and it's got to be weeded out at all levels. And the military, like I remember when I was deployed out to Japan for 3 years, and I remember like there was no combatant ships, didn't have women yet on board, and it was just starting, and it takes a while to change a culture, especially a culture that can be so kind of like, I think, forged in like real heated experiences. And I think to me, I find it very encouraging when I see on like LinkedIn posts about like, women generals and women who are, captains of aircraft carriers, because, we've come, it takes time, but it comes a long way. And it's so much more helpful for the country to have people serving who are the best soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines, regardless of gender. We should just have the best and the brightest, regardless.
I 100% agree with you. And, somebody once said, hey, do we sacrifice diversity for talent? Man, that's a good question, right? I believe we need to hire the best people to do the job. Now, do I think diversity is important? Yes, we all do in America, because our America is a melted, blended pot. And
more than any other country in the world.
Absolutely. So yeah, we all believe, regardless of what color we are, believe that diversity is important for our country. And people drive me, my RPMs go up when I start hearing people keep this thing on, one side of the fence. Like, no, we're a melted pot here. We're all blended. We're diverse. But at the same time, whether you're male or female, let's put the best people in the places to do the job. That's all anyone would ask for. And I would tell you, I think our military is doing a heck of a job with that. Like you said, things get better with time. They do. And I think with our organization, which is the biggest organization in the world, we're always the lead when it comes to change. And our Army is doing a fantastic job with that. We have phenomenal leaders in every turn. And I'm absolutely proud to be in the Army.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've kind of stumbled into which seems like a nice way to kind of end the conversation. That's a great great feel good way to finish this. But before we actually get to the actual end, can I ask, like, and what gives you hope at the end of the day?
People, and I've always said this, that when you provide people proper resources, proper training, proper care, man, you'd be amazed what people will do, what they can do, how they can perform. I truly still believe in people, sir. And I get this. There'll probably be people that say, I don't trust anyone. And I get it. I know those people. Like, I get it. That, in some places, the trust is gone. But I will tell you, inside our Army, I have hope with our people. That the people that are going to come behind me and replace me real soon, that I have the full trust and confidence in them. That they're going to receive the proper training and proper care and have the best leaders possible to take care of them. So I have hope in that process.
That's great. All right. Well, Sergeant Major Jackson, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been a real privilege and an honor to be able to share some time with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this time, and I wish everyone that is on, LinkedIn here that God bless you. Take care of yourselves. I wish you long life and good health.
All right. Thank you. And thank you to all the listeners and viewers out there. May you go out and explore our country with unconditional curiosity, respect, compassion, and humility. All right. Thank you very much.